Listeners, Kath Langman here, back with you on the Brand Marketing Show. And today, as I record this, it's actually the 1st of July, which means that we're halfway through 2026 already. I mean, how incredible is that? I feel like I always say this every year, but I'm sure time is flying by faster than ever. Now, to kick us off today, I'm just going to quickly illustrate a really common scenario that a lot of e-commerce brands frequently find themselves in. Let's say it's a Tuesday. I mean, as I record this, it is a Tuesday. And let's say that sales have been a little bit flat in your business and you're looking at the numbers and that quiet voice in the back of your head says, let's just run a quick sale, 25, 30% off. Let's just really, get things moving again. And got to get some cash in the bank kind of thing. And the maddening thing about that voice is that it's never wrong in the moment. You run the sale, it works. The dashboard lights up, the conversions jump, the abandoned carts start converting, and by Wednesday you're feeling somewhat relieved that you've done it and you can stop stressing out so much. That feeling has a name, and it's the reason that I really wanted to make this episode. I don't know. I mean, a number of you listeners would be using Klaviyo for your CRM and email and SMS marketing. So you may have already seen this, but Klaviyo shared a paper recently called Sugar High, and it was put together by James Herman, who is a New Zealand-based marketing effectiveness expert, and it was written in partnership with Klaviyo. And so the whole thing sits behind one idea that, it's kind of really interesting to think about. And it's this: discounting feels like energy, but it's actually debt. And the brands most hooked on it essentially spend most of their working lives operating with a hangover, hence the title of the paper, Sugar High. Now, to be straight with you about the data, because of course I always want you to be able to trust me, and so I don't want to dazzle you with any kind of inflated figures or anything like that. So the numbers that are quoted in this paper come from two sources. Klaviyo looked at more than 7,500 brands globally, with a subset of 683 here in Australia and New Zealand. And a company called Profit Peak went really deep on 176 Australian brands across a full year of trading. So, significant amount of data, but it's not a lab experiment with, proper scientific controls. And the brands studied were already using those platforms. So you definitely can treat these percentages as very strong indicators, but I probably wouldn't treat it as gospel that applies to every single business around the world. But, two separate teams, two different methods, but they landed on the same story. And I think it's a story that is worth your attention, hence why I am sharing it here on the show. Now, before I go really, dive into it in detail, I want to say something up front here, because I don't want you switching off thinking I've just become the fun police here. I'm not here to tell you that you should never run a sale. I think almost every brand runs the odd genuine sale event from time to time, and premium brands are no exception. Might be end of financial year or Black Friday if that genuinely suits you, or a real end of season clearance when you've got stock with an honest end of life moment. And all of these are absolutely legitimate. They're planned moments with a defined job and a defined end date. And, the good ones are priced into the forecast, the sales forecast, before they've even been run. So I'm not telling you to stop these kind of things. This is not what the episode is about. And, on top of that, I don't believe that these are the sorts of sale events that are hollowing brands out and putting them in that terrible kind of financial position. What I'm talking about, though, is something different. So it's when the sale stops being the occasional event and becomes the whole strategy. When discounting is essentially the only marketing lever or conversion lever that you ever pull in order to generate revenue. When there's a promotion running at every calendar moment, the year offers, and the Quiet Tuesday sale has become a monthly or even weekly habit, that's the thing doing the damage, not the occasional planned event. It's the constant, almost on autopilot, it's always on sale drip. Here's the first thing that turned my head. You would assume the brands discounting the hardest are buying their growth with margin, i.e., trading a bit of profit for a bigger top line. I mean, that's the deal that we all think that we're making when we run these, frequent sales, right? The data says they're not even getting that. The brand's doing, this constant discounting and not even getting that. So the heaviest discounters grew the least across the top line. Low discounters grew gross merchandise value by around 12% year on year, whereas deep discounters only managed about 6%. And on profit margin, the gap is brutal. The disciplined brands grew margin by roughly 8%, whilst the deep discounters went backwards by 11%. I mean, that's a 19-point swing between businesses selling, in many of the same kinds of products to much the same kind of people. The only real difference is how often they put things on sale. And before you tell me what I know many of you are probably already thinking, which is, that's fine for a premium brand, Kath, but I'm not a luxury label and my customers expect a deal. Well, get this, the data took that excuse away too. The comfortable belief is that heavy discounting is a cost of doing business if you are a value brand, and that holding the line is a luxury that only premium brands can afford. Well, it isn't true. Across low, middle, and high price points, the heaviest discounters grew the slowest. So it's not a flaw, it's a treadmill, and everyone just runs harder and ends up in the same spot, but just with thinner margins, and they're a lot more tired. Here's the number I think that you should carry out of this episode because it's the one that I think reframes everything. When those brands ran a discount, 68% of the orders came from returning customers, your existing people. And if you compare that to the full price periods, this is again looking at your constant discounters, where returning customers were only 11% of orders. So the constant sale is not winning you new customers. It's not widening your funnel. It is not bringing you a flood of new people that you would otherwise not have found. It is overwhelmingly finding the customers who already know you, presumably already love you, and in a great many cases would have bought from you anyway had you not trained them to wait for a discount. So you've literally handed discounts to the one person who really didn't need one. Let's slow down on this point here because, I do think that it's a point that the sugar high paper doesn't really spell out, and it's the part that I think does matter the most if you have built a considered premium story-led brand. When discounting becomes constant, it doesn't just cost you margin, it changes what your brand means to your best customer. And it does it through one of the oldest, most reliable mechanisms in psychology. Now, I studied psychology, consumer psychology at university. But even if you didn't, you probably will have heard of Pavlov and his dogs. If you ring a bell before you feed a dog enough times, and eventually the bell alone is going to make the dog salivate without the food, because the dog has learned that that sound means that food is coming. So it's not a decision for the dog to salivate, it's a trained reflex. Now, think about what a brand that's always on sale is teaching its customers. Every few weeks, maybe even more frequently, it's the same pairing. The brand shows up and a discount follows. Brand, discount, brand, discount. You do that often enough and you have trained your customer as surely as Pavlov trained those dogs that the smart move is never to buy now, it's to wait because the bell always rings eventually. You probably didn't mean to teach that lesson, but you taught it beautifully. And then think about who you've taught it to. The buyer you actually wanted, the one who chose you, not because you were the cheapest, but because something about you resonated. It could have been, your brand or your product story of origin, or the design, or the your own personal story, or it could have been just the feeling or the lifestyle that it evokes. That customer wasn't running a cost benefit analysis when they first found you, not if you did your job with that kind of uh, you know, top of funnel storytelling and, trying to connect and resonate with the right kind of customer, So they were, for want of a better phrase, falling a little bit in love with your brand. And the price they paid then, in that mindset, it's not a rational calculation. It's simply the cost of the thing that they'd fallen for. A constant sale takes that person and over time retrains them. A little rush of wanting it gets replaced by a person who now feels a little bit silly paying full price because they know if they just wait, the bell will ring again. You've converted your most valuable buyer into your least profitable one, and you did it while congratulating yourself on a great sales week. There's also a bit of hard arithmetic underneath all of this too that I think every founder should have tattooed somewhere, somewhere visible. Let's say for, using round numbers here because it keeps it simple. If you're working on a 50% margin, gross margin with your product pricing, which is, fairly common for a lot of product businesses, and then you take 40% off for your sale, your profit on that item doesn't just fall by 40%, it falls by 80%. And now you have to sell roughly 5 times the number of units just to, stay in the same spot. At 50% off, obviously, you're selling at cost, and that's not taking into account any ad spend that you might also be spending at the same time. You're doing all of the work, all of the packing, all of the customer service for absolutely no reward. So the discount always feels cheaper than it is because you feel it in a number that isn't on the screen in front of you. And then there's the hangover, which is real and measurable. I mean, if you're a parent like I am, have a think about when your kids go to a party and they eat lots and lots of lollies and drink lots of sugary drinks, and then they come home and they have that awful sugar withdrawal. Behavior is abominable. This is what it's like. In the weeks after a discount ends, well, the days, top line revenue in this data, in this white paper, fell by an average of 27%. So that not against the sugar high of the sale week, against the brand's normal baseline. The brand sold less than it would have if the sale had never happened. That's brutal, isn't it? Because the customers who were always going to buy it simply brought their purchase forward to catch the deal. So if you plot that over a year, it stops looking like growth and starts looking a bit like a heartbeat. Spike, crash, slow climb, spike, crash. And brands that discount habitually, they never quite climb back to the baseline before the next sale starts. So the baseline itself slowly sinks. So by now, you might reasonably be thinking, I've come here to tell you that all financial incentives are evil and that you must hold the line at full price or you will eventually perish. I promise you I have not. And let me dive into the reframe here because, it'll hopefully be one that changes what you do on a Monday or a Tuesday when you're really feeling the pressure of generating more revenue. The question was never whether to be generous with your customers or not. Premium brands can absolutely be generous. The question is whether your generosity rewards a behavior or discounts a product. I think that's a really important concept. A discount is attached to a product, whereas an incentive is attached to a behavior. When you take money off the product, you lower what it's worth in the customer's mind, and that damage can stick. But when you reward a behavior instead, it could be spending more, coming back, reaching a loyalty tier, adopting the full range that you sell. You leave the product's price in the customer's mind untouched. So your anchor survives and you fund the generosity out of a bigger basket or a longer relationship, not out of the product's perceived value. So for your identity-led customer, the kind of considered buyer or the kind of buyer who makes those considered purchase decisions of premium brands, those two things send very opposite signals. So an unconditional discount says the product is worth less than you thought. An earned reward says that you're worth more to us than a single sale. The first is going to collapse the romance into a spreadsheet, and the other will deepen the relationship without really ever touching the price, in the customer's mind. So if I give you a few honest tests, because I always want to give you something tangible that you can walk away with, and this is going to really help you identify what might be happening in your own business. Any incentive can be run well or badly. So ask yourself, is the money attached to the product or to a behavior? Is it earned or simply given? Does it train the customer to wait because of its frequency or to do the thing you actually want them to do? Does the reference price survive intact? And does it lift average order value or lifetime value enough to pay for itself? Run the usual suspects through those questions, and they will pretty quickly sort themselves out fairly honestly for you. Acquisition, discounts, and clearance sales both attach money to the product, and they can give it away unconditionally. That's what makes them the riskiest of the lot. They're not automatically wrong. A genuine end-of-life clearance is a legitimate thing. Acquiring a customer who truly never would have tried you can sometimes earn its keep. But most acquisition discounts do end up leaking straight to the people who'd have bought anyway, that 68% that I mentioned earlier. The customers who you do acquire on a deep discount tend to arrive, this is just basic maths, tend to arrive with a lower basket, and they also end up having a lower lifetime value for your brand because you've selected for the trait of caring most about price. But more importantly, a constant sale is often a hero product sale wearing a disguise, which usually means it's a symptom of a buying problem upstream, not a marketing strategy at all. Loyalty rewards and thoughtful bundles are a different animal because they attach the money to a behavior and they make a customer earn it. The loyalty reward is paid for by the lifetime value it protects. The bundle is paid for by the bigger basket it creates, which means it can be margin neutral or even positive where a flat percentage off is pure leakage. Neither one trains people to wait because you can't sit around waiting for a reward that only exists if you either spend more or come back more often. And neither one broadcasts price brand to the market either. An example that I can share here would be from my skincare brand Indagare, and we sell curated sets. So it has, 3 to 5 products in the set, and it does price it a little bit more kindly than buying every product separately. And these sets live on the website permanently. They're not just a seasonal drop. They're not a flash sale. They're simply always there. And another example would be for Baby Aiders, which is the kids, baby and kids sunglasses brand that we run. And that one has I can't remember the title that we call the bundle, but it's like sunglasses, strap, and case. So same concept, right? So you look at what that does against the tests. They're saving The saving is attached to a behavior. It's adopting the whole routine, not to just any single hero product. It's earned because you only get the set price if you commit to the set. And the individual products keep selling at full price every day. So the reference point of any one item never moves. And because it's permanently available, it's quite literally, there's nothing to wait for. So you can't train a customer to defer a purchase for something that's just simply always there. One part I really love, and I think this maps perfectly onto the premium buyer. A skincare set doesn't just raise the basket today, it actually changes how the customer uses the product because they end up adopting the full routine. They use the range the way it was designed to be used. They get better results, and that means they're going to come back to replenish, and they're going to be replenishing multiple items every time. So the set isn't only a bigger one-time transaction, it also leads to a better outcome and experience for the customer. And it also, because of that better outcome and experience, that's what builds the relationship and leads to more and bigger repeat purchases down the pipeline, which is the whole game for the customer who wanted the result, not the deal. Now, this framing has to lead with some kind of completeness, not with the saving. So, if the pitch just shouts, save X dollars or X percent, then you've just sold the customer your individual prices are soft. And, you're right back to discounting the product. If I think back to actually my first ever business, which was a modern cloth nappy brand or diaper if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and we would have bundles there as well, and they were like, we did bake in some better value when you bought the different sized bundles, but the way we labeled them not only kind of took the focus off the savings, the financial savings, but it actually better communicated what the bundle was for. So there was a trial pack, there was a half-time pack and a full-time pack from memory. I probably had them labeled slightly more eloquently than that. But that was many, many years ago now. So I'm reaching back right into the recesses of my memory. But, it's the same kind of concept. So if it leads with the full ritual or the full set, it's beautifully assembled, and the price advantage is just, the quiet reason to get them all at once and to believe in that outcome rather than the headline, reason for buying, then that set reads as curation. You're charging for the considered routine, and the better price is kind of a byproduct of choosing the whole thing, which is, same dollars off. It's just sending a completely different signal to the buyer. Now, I know for some of you listening, this might be landing a little bit close to home because you're hearing me describe the constant sale, and some of you are going to be realizing it's basically your entire marketing calendar, and your stomach might just be dropping a little bit because you're wondering, how on earth do you climb out of something that your customers are now trained to expect? So I want to be really clear and kind about this as well. You can change it. I've seen brands do it, and I've done it myself for many, many times over with the brands that I work with. So it's completely doable. I'm not going to lie to you though about what it takes, because honestly, if I tried to pull the wool over your eyes, I'm sure you'd smell it a mile off. But trying to pull yourself out of a discount spiral is not going to be an overnight fix. When you first pull back on the constant discounting, things will feel worse before they feel better, because your existing customers have been trained to wait, and they will keep waiting for a while. And that's the withdrawal. It's real. It will be uncomfortable for a bit. And the brands that panic in that window and relapse into a sale are the ones who will never, ever get out of it. You have to also bear in mind in these moments, if you are trying to change the way or change your marketing away from constant discounting, Because, like I said earlier, when you're running the sales, the vast majority of people who are going to buy from you on sale are going to be from your existing customer base. But you have to think about your existing customer base a little bit like a sponge filled with water. Every time you squeeze that sponge, some water comes out. That's like, you're squeezing your existing database to buy from you again, and again. Eventually, that sponge will run dry. You can't squeeze more and more and more sales orders out of an existing customer base indefinitely. Eventually, they'll dry up. So you have to find ways to attract new customers, right? The brands that do hold their nerve, though, in the difficult initial period of trying to pivot out of a constant discounting spiral, they taper gradually rather than quitting cold turkey and put the saved margin into actually building the brand. They come out the other side with healthier customers, fatter margins, and pricing power that they'd forgotten that they had. Now, if you have been in a bit of a constant discounting pattern, I want to invite you to listen or re-listen, if you have heard it before, to my episode 301 on this show, which was called Discount Detox. And in that particular episode, I walked through exactly how one brand rebuilt itself after years of discounting dependency. It's kind of the practical companion to this episode, I would say, and it'll show you that the way out isn't just theoretical, it's a path other founders have already walked with success. Now, before we wrap things up for this episode, I want to leave you with one last thought, because this is where all of this is quietly heading. More and more of your customers are now asking an AI assistant what to buy, what's the best option for them because of XYZ reason. I've talked about this on the show. Those models aren't price comparison engines. They're trained to reward signals of authority, consistency, and reputation. So a brand whose entire digital footprint is 30% off this weekend only is kind of going to teach these algorithms in the clearest possible terms that it's a price brand, not a quality brand. It's one more reason the constant sale costs you more than the number on the screen. But that's really an episode for another day. I will dive into it because, you know me, I love diving into anything data related. But for now, here's the thing that I think you should carry with you from this particular episode. The brand that you've built or are building is your asset. The constant discount is a loan that you take out against it, and the interest is going to be far higher than the number that you might see. If you'd like a proper look at where your own incentives are quietly working for you or against you, that is exactly the kind of thing that we pull apart together in a brand growth strategy session. But even if you never speak to me, I want you to walk into your next Quiet Tuesday and ask the one question that changes everything. Not, should I run a quick sale to generate some cash flow, but am I about to reward a behavior or discount my product? If you can get that right, you can be as generous as you like. That is it for today's episode. Hope you've enjoyed this one. And as always, I look forward to being back in your ears this time next week. Bye for now.